Back again with a fresh set of 10 PMI sample clone questions. Questions which we have obtained from PMI, but we have reworded them and are going to discuss about them at length, at breadth. First, letting you attempt, and then I going out and explaining what exactly is the tips and tricks to go ahead and attempt the question or ace the question at full length. Also, we'll be discussing as you go ahead and see about the PMI exam. Also, sixth versus seventh edition, that's a burning question. And I presumably, for all these sessions, go ahead and discuss about this particular facet at the outset itself. Also, we'll be discussing about any other questions related to PMP. So feel free to go ahead and put your valuable comments on chat. I'll go ahead and reply to each and every one of your comments as we move on. So let's start with the details about the PMP exam. A brief about the structure. As you know, in 2021, it's 180 questions in 230 minutes. So you have roughly 1.26 minutes per question to go ahead and attempt. Also, 50% weightage on predictive, 50% on agile. With the agile questions, also testing you a bit of your knowledge in the hybrid perspective as well. Yes, from the predictive and agile perspective. So it's very important to go ahead and be as much ready as possible from the agile mindset. Being fast, being flexible, being adaptive, and very importantly, having the servant leadership kind of thinking. Also, very importantly, you need to know what exactly are the tips, tricks, and strategies to ace the questions. None of the PMP questions are hard if you go ahead and attempt those, or if you go ahead and view those in the best way possible. The best way, the PMI, way of thinking. You have to go ahead and internalize that thinking, and that's what we will go ahead and see. Think inside the box, apply the keywords techniques, and then go ahead and see that very seamlessly you go ahead and come out with the right option. Okay, so let's move on to the second slide out here. As you see, most of the points are discussed already by me. So it's delivered on computer. You know it very well. Either at your home or in the exam center, you can go out and attempt. So you have 230 minutes. You have 180 questions. Pass or fail, you just get to know whether you have passed or failed or not. You don't know the exact percentage or score that you need to attain, and that's it. That's not too much of a difficult proposition, provided you are preparing the best way possible. Yes, and furthermore, you have these three domains appearing, namely people, process, and business, with the split of topics being 42%, 50%, and 80% respectively. So all those chapters or all those concepts which goes ahead and seamlessly falls under these domains will go ahead and feature these relevant percentages of questions in the real exam. And as I already discussed, Agile occupies 50% of the weightage in the exam, predictive occupying 50% rest of weightage in the exam. Now, very importantly, let's quickly go ahead and view the edition that you need to go ahead and still look into. It's still the sixth edition. Let me share the screen for you. And here you go. So as you see out here, it's still the sixth edition that's prevalent in your exam. So that's something which you need to keep in mind for now. Yes, very soon there will be the seventh edition. When, what, we don't know. Still the sixth edition. So let's stay fixed with the sixth edition itself. Let's deep dive into the 10 sample PMI questions, which is the attraction of the day next. Just before that, let me see if you have any questions out here for me. Okay, so Anu, you are saying that no matter how much I prepare, I feel that I'm still not exam ready, having exam anxiety. Okay, so for any such reasons whatsoever or any such of your queries, please reach out to me directly at my email ID, which is this. I've just provided that on our chat. Please write an email and then see how I best go ahead and deal with that. I have mentees from across the globe, and what I normally do is first and foremost, I go ahead and assess your strengths and weaknesses. Someone's strengths might be, time management. Awesome. Again, that might be someone else's weakness as well. Or like you or many others, exam anxiety is one of the weaknesses. Even I also suffered from exam anxiety at some point of time. But we'll have to overcome jointly, right? There are various ways to go ahead and overcome the same. The first and foremost way is to remove the fear from your mind that PMP is something which is very hard. Absolutely not. It is not hard at all. Yeah, we need to go ahead and internalize some key aspects, which we'll see in today's questions as well, and then we'll slowly and surely get into the right aspect whatsoever. You can do it. Anu. Okay, how simulator are the practice simulator questions to the actual exam? Yes, Vuzumuzi, absolutely. So the questions that we will go ahead and try out today will be from the real exam itself. But as I said, I have reworded the questions in a way in which you will be able to solve, and also you'll be able to see what are the tips and trick techniques out here to go ahead and best deal with it. And very importantly, uh, it's very important to keep in mind that our simulator, the EduHubSpot simulator, also goes ahead and gives you all the questions, which are very similar to the real exam itself. Yeah, so if you go ahead and practice our simulator questions, you'll definitely be getting the confidence to go ahead and ace the exam, as many of our mentees are doing as well. Okay, so I see someone who is writing, do you just click next to the next questions while taking the exam? Just taking the exam few minutes ago and the computer crashed. Okay, again, please reach me out. Which exam you are taking, I need to see. If you are taking our simulator, then obviously I'll go ahead and help you out. If you're taking some other simulator, then possibly you need to go ahead and rethink about the software and possibly take care or, deal with the question with the relevant support team. Okay, I see some of your screens are blurry. Not sure if everyone is facing the same issue or not. At my end, it is perfectly fine. Okay, so PMP. Okay, so you attempted the PMP questions itself. Okay. So you have to click on save and next. Yeah, that's the easiest way to go ahead and take it forward. But even before you attempt, you have to ensure that your system is providing us the support for the real questions. Okay, Matt, are the clone questions included in the simulator practice? Yes, it is included provided you go for bootcamp. The 210 sample PMI cloned questions are available for those who attend our live classes. So that is the the provision that has been provided by PMI to provide you the sample questions provided you are going ahead and signing up for the live classes. Live classes under the bootcamp package. And the bootcamp package is out here. As you see, this is the link to the bootcamp package. I will talk about more details on the same once you are done with all the questions. My upcoming bootcamp is on September 11th, and should you have any questions again, feel free to reach me out. I'll go ahead and start sharing my email IDs, email ID, once we are done as well at regular intervals. Okay, Calvin, that's absolutely perfect. Yes, we are in no mood or motivation to go ahead and open the PMI reference thick books whatsoever. Yes, absolutely. But then you have to do justice to that in the smart way. And that's where EduHubSpot will go ahead and tell you what exactly you will have to come out with in terms of strategies. There are strategies to ace questions. First and foremost strategy is obviously you'll have to think to yourself that I am there to go ahead and kill a PMP. Then let you come to us. Let's jointly go ahead and conquer on any of your doubts on the concept, and we'll also tell you what to study, when to study, how to go ahead and best tackle it. Our videos, slides, and even our mentorship will definitely help you guide. Okay, Deepak says that I'm part of bootcamp. I want to confirm if there is some possibility of getting those simulated questions. Absolutely, Deepak. So you'll be able to get these simulated questions. In fact, once you're done with the entire discussion, you'll get to see the link over YouTube, and you can go through that any number of times. You can even pause, unpause, go through the questions and see where you exactly stand in terms of your attempt to the questions. Yeah, so now let's get started with the 10 questions. Let me share the screen. Okay, so here you go. The timer is for 60 seconds. As you see in the right, I've started the timer. Please attempt. And also write the options in the chat section. Let me also see how you're faring. Okay, providing you 20 more seconds. Okay, any other options? I see Matt going ahead and providing the same. Anyone else? Any other options? Okay, okay, I see a lot of C's. Great, let's get started. Okay, let me pull in my pointer. Okay, so in the past 1 year, the cost per story has risen by more than 200% owing to repeated usage of a faulty platform that's no longer supported. The Agile project is forecasted to exceed the budget threshold at the next or upcoming iteration. Now, in such cases where you have a couple of sentences, which is jam packed with many info or much information whatsoever, what you need to first and foremost do is obviously take a pause, reread the question, and try to break each and every of these facets out into realizable formats. So, what are the various facets out here? Past 1 year, okay. So from now, past 1 year, you are going ahead and talking about the cost per story, which has risen by more than 200%. So the cost per user story has risen by more than 200%. Obviously, there is some issue which needs to be looked in. What is the issue? Is the repeated usage of a faulty platform. So you haven't done anything about the faulty platform. You're still going ahead and using and using and using. And that platform is no longer supported. Unfortunately, if you go ahead and still go, make use of the platform, obviously your cost per story is supposed to rise. That's what you are going ahead and seeing. The Agile project is forecasted to exceed the budget threshold at the next iteration. Now enough is enough. Over the past 1 year, you have gone ahead and used this faulty platform over and over, and your cost has increased. Now it is on the verge of going ahead and exceeding the threshold in the next iteration itself. So these are the two couple of terms out there. Now, which of the following options reveal as to who should decide to cancel the project? Now, very, very importantly, this is what matters at the end of the day. If you see the story given out here in the question, has nothing whatsoever to go ahead and, have any leverage on the question that's being asked. The question, as simple as it gets, asks you who has the power to cancel the agile project. So only thing that gets derived from this question is that you are dealing with the agile project. Now, who has the right to go ahead and cancel the agile project? Yes, this happens to be one of the easiest questions as well. Project manager. Yeah, not all the agile projects will have their project manager, right? So there are agile project managers, but he or she doesn't go ahead and have any big say in terms of canceling the project. Head of business control, as you know, very, very, very importantly, in agile, the team goes ahead and takes most of the call. They are empowered with making the decisions whatsoever. So any of the Scrum team members, be it product owner, Scrum master, or even the Scrum team, are empowered to go ahead and take the call end to end from their perspective. Head of business control doesn't obviously come in picture, although he might go ahead and communicate the same to the Scrum team that things are not looking too bright out here, and it's your call to go ahead and take in terms of whether you need to go ahead and proceed with the work or not. But then the head of business control doesn't decide whatsoever, or the decision doesn't rest under his perspective or under his end. Let's cancel the head of business control option. Option C, product owner. Very, very important. In Agile, who is the person who has the full on right to go ahead and talk about the product or deal with the product, own the product? It is the product owner. So if the project which is related to this product has to be cancelled, then obviously it is the product owner who has to come to the limelight, right? Obviously, even though the procurement manager is just out of context. So the closest options out here is between A and C. You know it very well. Agile project manager, is there to go ahead and support. He doesn't have anything to do in terms of going ahead and taking any call or decision. He definitely can be part of the decision making process, but then he doesn't own anything. Is the product owner who owns the product backlog, who owns the end-to-end perspective of the product. And if the product development has to stop, it is only him who has to go ahead and take the call, no one else. So let's go ahead and mark the option. As you see, the product owner is the correct option. That is option C. Let me see. Okay, so there are some B's, but as I saw at the outset itself, there were many C's. So we have definitely gone ahead and kickstarted in the best of shapes. Yes, we are in the best of shapes, and that is something which is very encouraging. We'll definitely be going on to the next question with this momentum in place. Okay, so Sanjay, you are not able to see for the blurred screen. There are some who are able to see the screen end to end. Not sure what exactly is the issue at your end. Might be his internet connection. You need to go ahead and look into. Okay, I hope those who have gone ahead and chosen option B, they right now know that product owner is the best option out here. I can go ahead and make the screen larger. Does this fit in? So we'll be going ahead and making the screen, to this proportion whatsoever whenever we go to the next question. Yeah, we'll make it full screen for your benefit. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, here you go. And your 60 seconds starts now. Okay, so last 10 seconds. Please put in your best options in the chat. Okay, so time's up. I don't see anyone attempting it. What happened? Everyone went ahead and thought that this is something out of the box. Okay, I see Matt. Awesome, Matt. You are in full-fledged form. Awesome, Kushbu. Great. So you now recognize what exactly is extreme programming all about, huh? Okay, so great. Let's go ahead and discuss more or in depth about the question. Let me. Okay. So what does this question talk about? You are the project manager of XYZ organization and are visiting the software supplier's office. Okay. A few of the occurrences surprise you. Now there are some occurrences which goes ahead and instantly surprises you. What are those occurrences? Estimations are based on deck of cards. Yeah, so we have gone ahead and had some kind of planning poker or cards technique to go ahead and estimate the user stories at our end. Remember, out of various estimation techniques, planning poker is also some technique by which, in lieu of which, we go ahead and estimate the story points of user stories. Right? Two people per workstation. Doesn't this sound similar or familiar to something which we refer to as pair programming? Yes. So we go ahead and appear or we go ahead and make use of this pair programming concept from the software programming paradigm itself, even in agile perspective, to go ahead and make sure that the productivity is to some other extent. We are going ahead and delivering fast and ensuring that there is minimal kind of wastage in terms of the efficiency or the productivity from the team's perspective. Two people per workstation, pair programming, programming in pairs, and getting done with the work. Software programs with names such as traffic cop and ringleader. So some fancy names we given to the software programs. Yeah, kind of drawing the concept of having some kind of buzz nomenclature for the programs to make it even more relevant or even more useful to the users whatsoever. So some of the other best practices which we derive from software programming and make use of in our current context. Now, the very important question up until this point or at this particular point would be that if I am not part of software world or I am not a software programmer, I am not dealing with a software project, will I have to go ahead and come out with all these concepts at hand? Absolutely not. So out here, if you just remember deck of cards, you know deck of cards what it stands for, and even planning poker technique. Two people per workstation. Remember the pair programming technique. or even some programs which are named some fancy names whatsoever. So you know for sure that there is something being derived from the software programming world to make it even more enhanced in front of the users. And what best goes ahead and fits in seamlessly is obviously the XP, or the extreme programming methods, which is option A. Now, even if you are not aware completely of extreme programming methods and you are getting this, bumper question out here, so you go ahead and see option B. Conducting gamified training sessions doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't have anything to do with gaming. It might have, but you are not getting that clue from this particular question. Even option C, the supplier appears to be conducting a team building exercise. Where is the team building taking place out here? Yeah, you can say there are two people per workstation. That is pair programming, and you are going out and increasing the productivity. You are also not talking from the team's perspective, right? You have split the team into pairs who can work at the relevant workstations. But then, is the team going out and having a team building exercise at their end? Of course not. The servant leadership in the supplier's end has a bit more freedom. That is also not the case out here. In fact, servant leadership, you know it very well, gives you the full empowerment, gives you the full freedom, makes you go ahead and take charge of the scheme of things and come out with the goods. So why will they go ahead and give more freedom? It's not also given that in the question that you had less freedom whatsoever. So you have the empowerment, you are empowered to take the calls at your end. So even if you see the other options, B, C, and D doesn't make sense. Extreme programming, software technology, a software method where you go ahead and enhance some of the other concepts from software programming, apply those in Agile, and make your scheme of things more productive. So I see Matt and Faizaz, you have gone ahead and bang on, go attempted this particular question right. It's option A itself. Hybrid is important too, absolutely, Calvin. Yes, absolutely. I see a few others who have also gone and attempted the question correctly. There are not many of the attempts which are correct. That's perfectly fine. And if you have such kind of a bumper question, click on mark for review. There is an option in the exam, mark for review. Move ahead. Don't go ahead and waste more than 2 minutes for such kind of questions. You can always come back later when you will be in much calmer or much peace of space of mind, and you can go ahead and attempt, this particular question without any doubt or without any fear whatsoever. That is what you are looking forward to attempt it correctly. Remember, the exam doesn't have any negative marking. So you are perfectly fine to choose your best option and move ahead. Later come to the question provided you are marking for review. So whenever you are practicing the exam as well, practice to go ahead and click on that mark for review so that later on you don't have to go ahead and mess things up. Okay, so let's see what's the option out here which is correct. Let me pull it out. Mark option A, click on submit. As you see, is the extreme programming method, which is the most relevant out here. Let's move on to the next question. And let me put it in full screen. Here you go. Starting the timer. Okay, so time's up. I'm giving you a bit more time. This happens to be a bit tricky question, but then again, you can deal with it in the simplest of ways possible. We'll go ahead and okay, let me go ahead and make the option C visible for you. Sorry, option D. I hope now it's visible. For those who can't see option D, please go ahead and select the best option and then type in the chat section. Yeah, so another minute for all of you. I can see a few of the questions. Indumati has gone ahead and asked the question whether PMI ACP is important to go ahead and ace before PMP. Well, that's not mandatory. You can, you will definitely get a big leverage in agile concepts, which is definitely going to be useful in PMP. But many people or many of our mentees go ahead and appear the other way around. Once get done with the PMP, the hardest of the lot, then get done with ACP, which actually helps or clear, enhances your chances of acing the question as well. And there was one of my known acquaintances who as such went ahead and aced PMP with a lot of rigor, but then found ACP to be a bit harder or a bit more tough than the actual PMP exam itself. So we always recommend get done with PMP, have an overall concept from predictive and agile, and then go for agile specialization. That helps you to pull up your scores like anything. But that's not mandatory. That's just our point of view. Okay, so I see many of you hug Santosh, Khushbu, Stephen going ahead and choosing option D. Great. This is as such one of my sessions where many of you are actually in the right phase of mind, even though this question seems to be a bumper kind of question. Yes. Okay. Sorry. So let me pause for 10 to 20 seconds. Please take more time. I'm not speaking. Okay. Okay, so you have made your best call. Now let's go ahead and dig deep into the question. What exactly the solution is? Okay, let me pick my pointer and also make it full screen for you. Yeah, so it's already full screen. Let's see what exactly the question talks about. As a project manager of XYZ Corporation, you are making use of a suitability assessment tool to find the right approach for a new project. The tool happens to rank on the following criteria. So now you're making use of a suitability assessment tool to find what is the right process or what is the best project approach for the new project to be dealt. Now the tool happens to rank in the following criteria or using the following criteria. So one is change, the change in the sense the rate of change to requirements. Yes, so requirements are coming, and if there are any change to requirements, what is the rate of change to requirements? Yeah, in terms of especially we go ahead and deal with requirements which are complex, right? So if the requirements are complex, not the entire or the end-to-end 100% requirements are known to us at the outset. So initially, with this 10% knowledge, say for example, in the real exam, we go ahead and get started with the project. Yeah, with the 10% knowledge on the project, we go ahead and get started with the project. But then, as and when we move ahead, we get more and more clarity. Chances are high that with more and more clarity, whatever we know or whatever we knew earlier, might go ahead and get changed, which is where we also go ahead and have this change to requirements. Now what is the rate of change of requirements? So that is one of the criteria that this tool goes ahead and makes use of. There's also the criticality of the product, the processes, and even the impacts of the defects. So, what is the criticality of the product? What is the importance of the product? Is it that critical? Is it one of the products which is, too high a criticality, or the features of too high a criticality, to be made available in the market at immediate go? Even the buy-in, executive support for adaptive methods. So there are several methods where you go ahead and adapt to the relevant stuffs, right? So whether you have the support to go ahead and adapt to the methods or not, yeah, you have the buy-in. Even team buy-in, if you have gone ahead and seen, in some of the other concepts where you go ahead and have a collaborative or collective kind of understanding amongst the team members to go ahead and help take your project forward. A collective buy-in, a support for adaptive methods, team size, number of members in the project team. So whatever are the number of members or in the project team, we are going ahead and having that also being taken into consideration. Also the skill in terms of their experience. The more the experience, possibly more the skill set, the lesser. You might have that kind of facet in your ranking criteria. Also, the access in terms of direct collaboration or feedback with the clients or the sponsors. Now, all these things are being measured as part of the suitability assessment tool. Now, the question says which combination of these factors is whatever the factors mentioned above, which of the following combinations would be best suited to fit the agile project approach. Now, in such kind of questions, whenever you are seeing that the word size is high or it is a bit of a bulky kind of question, it's always worthwhile or always wise to go ahead and read the last sentence out here in the question. And when you see that you have to find out the combination of factors which is suited for agile, you don't even need to go ahead and read all these facets out here. So out of all these, options or all these, parameters out here, you need to choose what is the extent, be it low or high, for all these factors. So let me again clear it out for you, and let's dig deep into each of these factors in more details. Now, in Agile, you know it very well that we are expecting a complex kind of requirement. That's why it is Agile, right? With whatever you have started or you have gone ahead and got started. So, obviously, you're expecting changes to be higher as well, and the rate of changes to be high amongst the lot. So, if you just know that particular facet out here in the question, you can easily opt for the relevant option. Which of the options has changes high? Obviously, option D. That is going to be the best option. None of the options are going ahead and having change which is high. So obviously D is the clear winner. See, in such minimal amount of time, we made full justice to this particular question, which initially seemed to us would have taken more than 2 minutes, at least the 3 minutes, but we got it done within 30 seconds. Just have these smart strategies in play. In case of worded questions, just go for the last line out here. If it makes sense, go for the options out here, or the the parameters given, and then see what is the combination of the parameters. At the outset itself, you get to see change is high. You are expecting the change to be high in fully agile project approach, right? Option D has to be the best option. Going into the other options out here, criticality, might be low, buy-in might be high. Yes, you are collaborating until unless you have the buy-in of the whole team member, you don't have that feature up in the product backlog in terms of the priority, right? So team size, as you know, ideally between 3 to 9. Lesser the team size, better it is in some or certain occasions whatsoever. Team skill need to be high, they need to be at the fullest of their skill levels, even assessing in terms of direct collaboration. One of the agile manifesto points, right? Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. You have to have access, which is medium possibly. But then the key or the winning point out here is change, which is high. You know for sure that even if the other factors are low or high, change has to be high out here. And you go for option D and make it forward or take it forward. So are you all with me? I see a lot of you have who have gone ahead and attempted or pointed out option D as the correct option, which is awesome. Keep it up. Let's see now which is the correct option out of the lot. So as you see, option D is the correct option. Let's move on to the next question. And here you go. It's the timer. Okay. So I see both Khushbu as well as SKIDD012 going ahead and marking the question correctly out here. So awesome. That's the spirit. and you are really nailing it, nailing all the questions. SB, I will definitely go back to the previous question, and you can go ahead and see, what is the best option out of the lot, or even the explanation as well. So once we are done with the explanation of this question, we'll definitely go back and showcase to you what the explanation is. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So there is one A and one C as well, but majority B, which definitely fills me with awesome happiness. Let's see what the question goes ahead and talks about. Okay, bringing the pointer back. Okay, so your marketing team wishes to be the first to launch a senior friendly version of the smartphone application. You have asked the Agile team to develop it. Yeah, so your marketing team wants this particular version of the app to be there launched from your development team. And you have gone ahead and asked the Agile team who is in charge of developing the application to develop it. Now, which of the following should you do to begin the development process? Now, you have definitely gone out and asked the agile team to develop it. So, what they have to develop whatsoever, you have to go ahead and specify that. So the minimum set of requirements which makes the product viable in the market is obviously the minimum viable product. That's your catch out here in the question. Once you have the minimum viable product, you can go ahead and work on other options as well and go ahead and deliver the product end to end to the market. That's what you're looking forward to, right? Have that in mind. You know that minimum viable product is something which you have to go ahead and say. So the risks, the other factors come later, but first you have to go ahead and tell them about the scope of the work. Then you go ahead and dig deep into the into the risk and the responses. Yes. So now let's see the options. Meet the product owner, the team, and this SMEs to identify risks and risk responses. As I say, even before risks and risk responses, you need to identify what is the minimum viable product or MVP which needs to get into the market. It is only then that you will be able to go ahead and identify both the risks and the responses. Yes. Option A gets negated in lieu of option B. It is the minimum viable product that you need to come out with. Asking your team to estimate the effort and build the business case accordingly. Very, very important. When you talk about the business case, it is nothing but the feasibility that you have in terms of your ROI, your NPV, and all the other business metrics to make sure that your project is going to yield positive revenues going down the line. Also, very importantly, less enough payback period. Know what payback period is? The time by which you go ahead and yield the value from the project end to end, right? But we have already kickstarted the application, the project whatsoever. It is not in the phase of you going ahead and deciphering whether the project is worth taking or not. So obviously, going ahead and thinking about the business case is not worthwhile at this phase when you are just supposed to go ahead and take forward your work in the project. If it was the business case when you were preparing the project charter, it would have made sense. But right now, you're already kickstarting with the project application. So you should be, equally, attentive about the phase out here, and that would definitely go ahead and mark this option out. Option D, meet the product owners, Scrum team, and SMEs to help identify risks and risk responses. Now, very, very important. If you get such kind of options out here where A and D are very close or similar, and you get to see that the difference out here is the team and the Scrum team, right? There is no other difference whatsoever between these two options. Obviously this is not the most important facet out here to think about it, right? You involving the team or the scrum team to go ahead and identify the risk and the responses doesn't make sense from the team's perspective, but what you are going to do from that perspective. Yes, so in case option A was the best option, option D had nothing to go ahead and say about. As option D would have been the correct answer as well. How can there be two correct answers in the same question? That should strike your mind. If you are confused between option A and D, that's why it's very important to read through all the questions. And you see, you have another strategy out here as well. But in lieu of which, you go ahead and negate both options A and D. Option C out of the context. Why? Because business case is not the phase at which you are in currently. You have to go ahead and deal with the minimum viable product. So it has to be option B out here. If you just go back and click on option B, as you see, this is the right explanation of the question. And as you see out here, minimum viable product comprises of all the features which are first to market and will be needed to enhance as the project advances. Okay, so debate, how can we make the answers visible? Because I can't see the question. Why can't you see the question? Everyone is able to see the question, right? Okay, so exactly you had eliminated risk, Priyanka. Absolutely bang on. Let me make the question again in the full screen mode so as to give you the full space in terms of viewing the question. If anyone has any doubts or any clarity, in terms of being able to see the question whatsoever, here it is. Yeah, so again, great done. I see 80% of the class going ahead and selecting option B. Awesome. Let me go back to the previous question as well as one of you requested. And let me go and select option D, click on submit. So as you see, this is the explanation out here. The best combination is high with high change. Yeah, predictive model would be required for high criticality and team size with low change, buy-in and skill. So that's what you deal with in predictive model, right? Hybrid approach would be for medium values whatsoever. But then from agile perspective, change has to be high. So had it been predictive or a hybrid, any one of these three options would have been very very highly likely. But as you witnessed or as you saw, it is the high change that you need to go ahead and keep in mind. Yes. So let's move on to the next questions. Okay, so here you go. Let me kickstart the timer again for you. Question 5. Here's the last 10 seconds. And time's up. Okay, so I see that Wuzumuzi has gone ahead and come out with the query that whether you have this option of highlighting the questions in the real exam. Yes, you absolutely do. You do have the capability of highlighting the questions in the real exam. You have a highlight option at the top. You can just click on that and just go ahead and highlight the options. Now, very importantly, you don't have to be fearful about such kind of features, what to do and what not to do at the start of the exam, PMI or Pearson V goes ahead and provides you the option to go ahead and test all these features at your end. And only when you are comfortable, you start or kickstart the main exam. So whatever options like you highlighting the question or you navigating questions by clicking on next or saving and going and clicking on next or mark for review options. So all these options you get to practice beforehand, before you go out and attempt the real exam itself. So you can make use of those initial times and get yourself used to and warmed up to the actual options and then go ahead and take forward the questions as and when you go forward. Okay, so I see a mix and match of many options out here. Okay, so I see many of you have gone ahead and chosen A and D. Makes me very, very happy. Let's see what the question talks about. Okay, so here's the pointer. You are part of an agile team sprint review. So what is sprint review? It's nothing but the demo, right? Where you go ahead and demo all the user stories which have met the definition of done criteria. So there are four sprint meetings, right? The daily scrum, the sprint planning. It starts with the sprint planning, then the daily scrum, the sprint review, and the retrospective. So these are the four meetings, whatever you have in normal scrum parlance. Sprint review is the meeting where you go ahead and demo the work that we have done, which meets the definition of done criteria end to end to the client. So now you are part of this sprint review meeting, and the situation is tense inside. And you get to hear that some of your team members are mumbling, they are confused, even kicking chairs and shouting at the product owner saying that, come on, this doesn't make any sense. Which of the following should the project manager do in such a situation? So there is a tense situation whatsoever. You need to go ahead and handle it. Which of the following makes the best of senses? Remember, in such cases, you going ahead and taking a stance to improve the confidence of the team members in you is the best way to go ahead and take it forward. First, create that environment of confidence, and obviously not go ahead and make use of your formal powers. Never, especially in the agile context. You know it very well that if you go ahead and say that you are not supposed to do this thing, get out of the room, or reprimand someone, rebuke someone, that is never going to work out in agile. In agile, it's all about servant leadership, where everyone is given the option of making the most. Yeah. So obviously, the option out here which says reprimand, gets knocked out. Now, the other option where it says calm everyone present, asking them to call on their emotional intelligence or EQ, emotional quotient, whatever you refer to, would be applicable if you have gone ahead and taken them in confidence. Now, just imagine a situation, a hypothetical situation. I am the project manager, say for example, and I enter a room where people start shouting. Now, will I directly ask them to go ahead and, hey, come on, take care of your emotional quotient? You are missing the point. How can you be, so careless out there and all these things? Shall I go ahead and directly say? I know it very well that I am not being a class monitor out there, right? I'm there to facilitate things. I'm there to bring the team in my confidence. I'm there to collaborate with one and all. I can't go ahead and try to calm everyone present. I will obviously try to calm, but then by making them or giving a call on their emotional intelligence, well, that's definitely questionable. Not the best of options. Yeah. Option E, remind the team of product owners' responsibilities and authorities. What does that have to do with you going ahead and making sure that the atmosphere calms down? Obviously, option E doesn't make sense. Options A and D, let's go ahead and dig deep into these options. Intervene. No one is asking you to go ahead and take the back step or taking the back seat. No, you have to intervene. You are the manager. Give them one full uninterrupted minute to present their case. Absolutely makes sense. So when you are in such kind of situation, you know have all the team members who are fighting against one another given 1 minute to go ahead and present their case. Let them say what exactly they are mumbling about, or what exactly have kind of opposition they have with regards to the scheme of things. They might have come out with something. They might be not agreeing with the customer might be saying otherwise, and just throwing the chairs might not make sense. But then if someone is a customer, let the customers only have their say. No, that's not how agile works. Customer and your team have to go ahead and present your views and opinions in front and go ahead and collaborate. And that's also PMI way of thinking out here. Intervene, give them 1 full minute and let them present their case. What that does is that goes ahead and increases the confidence levels among each and every of your team member, which is when you get to have the all team members in your confidence. Yes, option A makes sense. Option D, facilitate. Now, when you go ahead and see such kind of options where it says about facilitate, especially in a conflict, scenario, that has to be the answer. So, also one of your keywords out here which you need to be very, very mindful about. Facilitating is one of the key terms or key ways to go and take it forward. Facilitate by asking the team to suggest ways to help resolve the dispute. Absolutely makes sense. You have empowered the team. Let them come out with ways to help resolve the dispute. Obviously, the dispute is not the ideal scenario. But yeah, I understand that people might be hot-headed and trying to go ahead with, various kinds of, aspects or measures, and might be even an ego clash and all those stuff. But then they are empowered to make the team, the best way, or the team go towards the best way possible. Why not ask them the ways to help resolve the dispute? If you have some queries, or if you have some things to go ahead and address, you have 1 minute. Address those out. Let's clear it end to end, and then take it forward accordingly. Facilitate. Yeah, be the facilitator out there and see how the magic works. Bring them into confidence, facilitate, get the job done. The two best options out here are A and D. So let's go ahead and see what are the best options out here. This is options A and D. As you see, these are the best options out here. Now, in conflict management, project manager needs to first ensure that all the viewpoints are expressed, followed by inviting suggestions on how to resolve the dispute. Yeah, so everyone gets their standpoint before you go ahead and resolve the dispute. Now, using your authority to reprimand or even calling down emotional intelligence without inviting the members and a compromise, definitely uncalled for. It's precisely what we discussed. Let's move on to the next question. Even before that, let me see if you have any. Yes, absolutely, Calvin. D is the problem solved by collaboration. Is also conflict resolution by constructive thinking. Awesome, Calvin. You're killing it. What happened to Matt? Matt was killing it at the outset as well. I find my Matt silent as of now. I hope, Matt, you are going ahead and answering in the correct fashion. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Here you go. Your timer starts now. Okay, so we are done with the time. So let's dig deep into the question. So you are working in an agile team which is tasked to develop a software application. Okay, so the team is agile, you are tasked to develop a software application. Now your client's legal team requires a detailed source code register for all builds and refused your company's offer for free developer support walkthrough meetings. Yeah, so remember out here even these terms like your legal detailed source code register for all builds might seem a bit alien for those who are not from software background. That's perfectly fine. Don't get puzzled or bemused or even fear or frightened and just move to the next question. Just see what the other stuffs are out here. They, that is your client's legal team, are refusing the company's offers. That's one keyword, for free meetings whatsoever. What does that mean is they are refusing to come into interactions. They're refusing to collaborate. These are the key couple of things what you need to take out from this particular question. Now, out of the total project effort, 70%, that is out of 100%, 70%, this is the majority effort was spent on documentation and 10% on implementing 45% or 45 of those feature changes. Okay, so these are some metrics which are given to you. How many of the four agile manifesto points are your project obeying out here? Now, very very important to go ahead and be mindful of the agile manifesto points. So quickly revise if you don't have the agile manifesto in front of us. So whenever you see this agile manifesto points, be very very mindful of all the points that we need to take care of. What I normally do is I go ahead with this acronym out here when it comes to the agile manifesto. I remember using that. How? I stands for individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Yes. W, working software over comprehensive documentation. Yes. C, as we discussed a few minutes back, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And R, responding to change over following a plan. See, it's so easy to remember the Agile Manifesto, right? Just remember this acronym IWC and R. Now let's go back to the question and see what exactly fits in. How many of these 4 points, exactly suffices this particular scenario out here? You are working in the team, everything is fine. You're developing some application. Your client is refusing to collaborate, is refusing to talk whatsoever. So what gets striked off? Obviously, customer collaboration gets striked off from here, right? So customer collaboration cannot be the case. The working software over minimal documentation. Documentation, anything mentioned? Yeah, 70% was spent on documentation. It's entirely opposite to minimal documentation mindset, right? From Agile Manifesto. So obviously, this option also gets ruled out. Individuals and interactions. Well, is your client going out and encouraging any form of interactions with your team members? Absolutely not. So the first manifesto point also gets ruled out. So the first three gets ruled out among I, W, and C. We are left with only R. Now, in such a case where you have the options from 1 to 4, you know very well that 0 is not there. So obviously there has to be at least one which is going ahead and matching. Has to be one, right? It can't be any of the other options. If you go ahead and reiterate and verify in this case, how responding to change comes in play? The last term out here, the last phrase, 10% on implementing 45 considerable feature changes. You have as such gone ahead and responded to feature changes as and when required rather than you following a plan. So isn't that you going ahead and adhering to this particular facet to some extent, if not 100%? And that's what the question is asking about. So it has to be option A, right? Let's see what's the option to this question. So as you see, it's option A, which is one. So these are all the Agile Manifesto points. And as you see, responding to change over plan, only that's being followed. Numerous changes implemented with little effort. 10% on implementing 45 considerable feature changes. That is the key thing to go ahead and catch. Okay, yeah, I see, Calvin. You have gone ahead and answered it perfectly. You seem to, kind of ace all the Agile Manifesto concepts. Must know the IWCR. Absolutely, Matt. And great to see you back in action. Awesome. So I hope everyone is now clear how to go ahead and take it forward. Remember IWCR, yeah, individuals, interactions, processes, and tools. Working software over minimal or comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over what? Contract negotiation, right? Responding to change over following a plan. IWCR. Remember that, it will just stay in your mindset. Even if it is not explicitly asking about you adhering to Agile Manifesto, you still know that these are the baselines, or these are the norms by which you need to go ahead and take your Agile project forward. Let's move on to the next question. Absolutely, Anu. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Let's see what the other questions are. Okay, here you go. And here's your timer. Here's the last 2 seconds. And we're done with the time. Okay, so even before we proceed with the explanation of the same, I'd like some options, at least someone who has gone ahead and marked it correctly. Chirag, okay, D, let's see whether D is the correct option or not. Anu, you don't need to remember all the 12 principles. It's just all about you being in the mindset. Yeah, so it's not a memory test at any point of time. Remembering the Agile Manifesto definitely helps. You know it very well. Okay, so Himal, option C. Awesome, Himal. Bang on. Anyone else? Siva, option D. Okay, so let's dig deep into the question. The question happens to be on the harder front, but will soon make it easier for us. Okay, let's go into the description of the question. Okay, so upon performing user testing on last product release, it was revealed that the user interest has gone down in certain features that require significant interest to develop. Now, hold a pause out here. Don't proceed with the next part of the sentence. It obviously, at first instance, will be a bit hard to digest. Reread the question. So there is some user testing being performed on the last product release. Now it was revealed that the user interest has gone down significantly in certain features that required interest to develop. There were some features which required significant interest. Unfortunately, the interest has gone down. Now, which of the following options can the agile team take up to prevent such disparity, to prevent this loss of interest in near future? Yeah. So remember, this loss of interest is from the user perspective, the end user perspective. It is as simple as you coming out with the mobile phone and the user doesn't have any interest in using the mobile phone at all. Yeah. So what we need to go ahead and look into in such cases, have we gone ahead and come out with the relevant features which can be dealt with in the mobile whatsoever at the end? Have we gone ahead and come out with the relevant features with high priority in the product backlog which we need to go ahead and deliver end to end? We haven't, right? So obviously the clue to the question will be from that perspective itself. Let's see what the options are. Get all the stories removed from backlog that are not selected for MVP. Now, if there was an option which was asking me to, come out with, MVP in a much better way, I could have as such gone ahead and chosen the option. Remember, and it's very, very important to see that just by looking at MVP, don't go ahead and mark the option saying that it's correct. Is not at all correct, right? Why? Because it is asking for removing the stories from the backlog that are not selected for MVP. So now you have a story backlog, and there are some features which are selected for MVP. You don't know what MVP is, as we discussed a few minutes back. The set of all the features which are minimum and required to go ahead and make the product viable end to end, to the user. But then getting all the remaining stories out of the backlog, will that ensure that your MVP as such is more attractable to the customers? Think through, think, or give a second thought. Obviously not. Option A gets ruled out. Yes. Check with the product owner to ensure that all the stories in the backlog support the product vision. Okay, is it that all the stories in the backlog didn't support the product vision at the end of the day earlier? Obviously the backlog is coming or being driven from the vision itself, from vision till roadmap, and roadmap to all the the backlog items in terms of the epics, themes, features, and all, right? It is driven by the vision, absolutely driven by the vision. But then the question is not about it being driven by the vision. It's all about you going ahead and satisfying the customers end to end. The customers have nothing to do with the vision apart from them being aligned with your product features. So you have to go ahead and do something else. Execute stakeholder analysis to come with the SMEs or the subject matter expert who can guide the backlog value ranking process. Bang on. So this is the value ranking process out here. The rank of the values of the stories where you are going ahead and possibly not being able to be in the best foot. Say there are 100 stories. Out of these 100 stories, there are 20 which constitute the minimum viable product, and I need to select those set of stories which needs to be out to the market as soon as possible, so that the user goes ahead and makes use of those stories and takes it end to end. I need to do that. Yeah, and that can be done if we have the definite value ranking process, which goes ahead and helps me come up with the 20 feasible features or n number of feasible features which are the topmost ranked, and goes ahead and increases the interest of the customers, or even are as per the interest level from the customer's perspective. This option makes the most sense out of the lot. Make sure that you break down the user stories in the backlog into smallest possible ones. Well, that's something which you need to obey, but that doesn't have anything to do with users not being interested whatsoever. Obviously, option D also gets knocked out. Now, this was a tricky question. You need to read through the options in more details to go ahead and get to the bottom of the answer. And great job, whosoever has marked option C at first go. Me remove it. So as you see, it's the option C, which is the correct one. The product got released without sufficient user input or prioritization to help, ensure its appeal. The input from SMEs can help with ranking features priorly, appropriately vision alignment, and breaking down stories into smallest font and normal agile practices, as I mentioned, right? But these do not address the prioritization and business problems. Also, MVP doesn't necessarily target the user satisfaction as is mentioned out here. It's in fact the basic functionality to go ahead and build upon. So now that basic functionality need to be targeted from the product backlog perspective. You need to come up with the relevant features, which makes more sense. You need to rank the features, as per the users deemed necessary or user, makes sense or makes sense to the users whatsoever. Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay, Kedar. Agile triangle, value on top. Absolutely. Back on. So, Imal, I see that you are in the best shapes of preparation. Okay, but SME looks like slipping responsibility as a PM while we need to recognize our limited expertise. While we need to recognize our limited expertise, SME looks like a slipping responsibility as a PM. No, see, SME is kind of subject matter expert, right? So who goes there and comes in play and sees that you gather those relevant SMEs or the people who are knowledgeable about the product and go ahead and rank those features inside the product backlog to the utmost extent possible. So that's itself, is the key thing which is missing. Possibly someone has gone ahead and helped the product owner rank these stories who might not be SMEs, not all of them. And the ranking of the stories might have been a different way, not in the way in which the users should be satisfied. That is the key area to go ahead and kickstart on. So SMEs are not necessarily the key point out here. It's the ranking of the stories which is the key point, which stands out. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, let me start the timer. Okay, so last 10 seconds. Okay, so you're done with the time. Let's move on to the explanation. Okay, so given that the product owner's or PO schedule is very tight, he wishes to delegate some of his tasks to the experienced agile team. Which of the following tasks is suitable to be delegated to the agile team? So the question asks which of the following tasks is suitable to be dedicated to the agile team from the product owner's perspective, since the product owner's schedule happens to be very tight as such. So what will be those tasks? So product owner is more dealing with the product, right? With the prioritization of the product backlog and sharing the same to the customer or rather to the team to develop, so that they come out with the relevant, features and get those done end to end. And you also get the user satisfied. That's what we are looking forward to, right? So now, very important. If say for example, I am the product owner, my schedule is tight, I don't have time to prioritize. Yeah, so what will I ask the team whatsoever? The team can, in the meanwhile, go ahead and add more items to the backlog. And then once when I have time, let me sit with the team and address the prioritization of the backlog, right? Isn't that going to be the case? Remember, the team is not going to prioritize the product backlog on my behalf. The team doesn't own the product backlog. Yeah, very, very important. So let's see what the options are. Get items added to the backlog before prioritization. Makes awesome sense. You don't have time right now as a product owner. Very good. You go ahead and ask the team members to add items to the backlog even before you kickstart with the prioritization. Makes sense. There is also a relevant option out here which says get items added to the backlog after prioritization. That doesn't make sense. Why? Because after you add items to the backlog, or after prioritization, if you add items to the product backlog, you'll again have to perform prioritization in all. The prioritization before backlog goes to waste. Why? Because the product owner needs to be present in the prioritization of the product backlog. The team is definitely welcome for prioritization and reprioritization, with the process being referred to as the refinement of the product backlog. The team is definitely welcome to go ahead and refine the product backlog end to end. But it is not, of course, the responsibility of the team to go ahead and ensure that the refinement is done at their end as such, or they have a call or say in terms of finalizing the refinement. It's the product owner's responsibility. So, going ahead and adding items after prioritization is again putting the team back to square one, where they will again have to go for the prioritization itself. So, even option C goes ahead and gets marked out. Option B, come out with the prioritized items for sprint backlog. Well, that anyways the team goes ahead and does, right? So product owner, will have or we might not have the say out there as well. Let the team, go ahead and get done with the work, get started with the work. As per the sprint process. If it happens to be at the start of the sprint, team will anyways go ahead and populate the sprint backlog from the product backlog and get started with the work. They don't need to wait for someone's go ahead to go ahead and start with the sprint. They will just go ahead and come out with the highest priority items in the product backlog and get started with the sprint itself. They are a set of empowered team members. Yeah, but if it happens to be the product backlog, is the responsibility of the product owner end to end. So this option doesn't make sense as well. Remember, it is the product owner who has to go out and assign activities to the team when he is busy. So has to be pertaining something to the backlog. Out here, the backlog by default is the product backlog being referred to, not the sprint backlog. Okay. Also, come out with backlog refinement sessions. Again, backlog refinement is the task and activity of the team as well as, and very importantly, the product owners. So, how will you go ahead and come out with the product backlog refinement sessions if you don't have time at all at your end? If an option D gets knocked out, has to be option A, which is the best option out of the lot. Let's see now. So as you see, option A is the best option. The product owner is the charge of the backlog, reprioritization, prioritization as well. Although the agile teams can come out with the items added, but the final decision rests on the product owner to go ahead and reprioritize the items. The best call for PO, product owner, to lead the team in terms of prioritization. And it also has to be before the prioritization itself for the team to go ahead and get items added to the product backlog. So does anyone have any question? Yes, Matt, absolutely. The keyword being before prioritization. Absolutely. Okay, so there's someone Ali who has gone ahead and passed PMP. And welcome, Taha. Awesome to go ahead and have your kind words out there on our chat. Okay, so let's move ahead. Kedar to wrong completely, but clear now. Okay, awesome. So let's move ahead. Okay, so this happens to be a very interesting question. Starting the timer. Before that, let me make it full screen. Here you go. Okay, so time's up. Any guesses? Giving 10 more seconds. Any guesses for what should be the right option? If you get this right, you are perfectly bang on, in terms of what is agile user stories and how do we deal with it. That's perfect, Ms. May. We are there to teach and we are there to learn. And we are all there to learn as well simultaneously, isn't it? Okay. Any guesses? No worries. Invest criteria might seem a bit alien. Let's deal with it. Okay, so let's see what's the best option out here. No idea, Kedar. Let's deal with it. Let's deal with it end to end. Let me put on my pointer. Even before that, yes, settings are perfect. Okay, so there is something that's referred to as invest criteria, right? So even before dealing or digging deep into the question, let's just briefly touch base on invest criteria. So for any of the user stories that we go ahead and come out with, yeah, we need to fulfill the invest criteria for those stories. It's a very important thing to go ahead and obey. I, again, this is entirely an acronym, and you can easily remember these. How? I stands for independent, N stands for negotiable, V stands for valuable, E stands for estimable, S stands for small, and T stands for testable. Now, if the user stories go ahead and obey all these facets, then you have a perfect user story in place to be implemented at your end. Yeah, the first and foremost thing is the independent facet. So when do we say that stories are independent? When obviously they don't have too much of dependencies whatsoever. In fact, null dependencies, amongst them or between them whatsoever. So the stories need to be independent of each other. Whenever we mention a story like, as a user, I want to do this so that I attain something, that should be independent of any of the other stories which you have come out with. Independent. Negotiable. Now the stories need to be negotiable. What do we mean by negotiable? See, out here, as a user, I want to do something. Isn't the user going ahead and negotiating with the development team, what exactly is required at their end? So all these features are features which are negotiated between users and the development team to help come out with the relevant functionality which they are looking forward to. Negotiable. Valuable, of course. As I presume Himal went ahead and said a few minutes back, value is one of the key features of Agile. We need to keep that in mind, right? Whatever we deliver from the end to end user perspective has to add some of the other value to the user. Value addition to the user is of utmost importance. Estimable. The stories need to be estimable, right? So you can't come out with a huge story, which you can't go ahead and estimate whatsoever. Doesn't fit in the agile concept. You will still get stuck in defining the story itself, and very likely you might either go ahead and get done with more the scope than what was planned for the story, or you might go ahead and deliver something which is very less with regards to the scope. So stories need to be estimable. It can't be, something which is like a vast ocean to go ahead and deliver. It has to be small. So this directly follows this. So if it has to be estimable, it has to be small as well. And finally, it has to be testable. So the users need to go ahead and test the features end to end. Then only you have a story at place. You can't come out with something which is not estimable. Yeah, so now having these points or features in mind, which is very simple, you don't need to memorize again, but just need to go ahead and remember this acronym and obviously these facets. The rest of the things should be just like plain water. Now, as a user, I want to be able to bend the flexible pipe up to 45 degrees in any direction to orient lighting from a fixed position. Okay. Story 2. As a user, I want to exert no more than this amount of pressure, 10 megapascals, to go ahead and bend the flexible pipe from a standing position. Okay. As an assembler, I want to spray the pipe coating that will prevent all the oxidation when exposed to 75 years of rain. Okay. Now stories one and two. Yeah, these stories whatsoever aren't they independent? They don't have any dependency between them, right? Negotiable, absolutely. You are going ahead and target from the user perspective. Valuable, absolutely. It is going out and adding value to the end user, in terms of the work that is being attained from the user story. Estimable, absolutely, those are estimable. Small enough, absolutely, it is going ahead and giving or mentioning only one feature is small enough to go ahead and attain, and even testable as well. I'm talking about only stories one and two. Yes, but then if you consider about story three, and if you look through carefully, story 3 goes ahead and attains all the facets except for the last term, which is testable. Why? Because it is referring to the oxidation going ahead and getting exposed for to 75 years of rain. So you are going ahead and exposing the pipe to 75 years of incessant rain, which obviously can't be tested. How can you test, something for 75 years of rain? You can't test for a day or an hour or, some n number of period. It can be, lasting for less than 10 years or more than 10 years. Can't for sure say that it's going to last for more than 75 years. Yeah, so you'll need to read through the entire story end to end and get to the conclusion that if something is being mentioned from the year's perspective out here, which is obviously not testable, it goes out and violates that particular perspective. Yes, so you need to go ahead and read through all these features in more details and see which of the following is not being adhered to. Out here, only story 3, which is failing the T criterion. There's nothing but option A. Yeah, so if you see any of the other options out here, doesn't make sense. Let me see who out of the lot have gone ahead and marked it correctly. Yes, absolutely, Kedar, and absolutely, Siva. So this is the key thing to go ahead and keep in mind. So you don't need to, have the thought process from the software paradigm or perspective. Let me again, remove the screen marker and make it again evident for all of you and make it full screen. So go ahead and have a relook into these 3 stories. Yeah, so you don't need to, go ahead and memorize some stuff from the software paradigm or have more weightage and understanding on, some of the other facets. Now, invest criteria is something which gives you the leverage to come out with the user stories end to end. If you have that criteria in the mindset, any question pertaining to user stories, you can just knock those out of the park. And that's what we are looking forward to. Yes, Matt, for this question, you need to know invest. Yeah, Bishanga. So this is, an acronym which you should be keeping in mind. So we have learned 2 acronyms. Remember, the first being IWCR for Agile Manifesto, and the second being Invest. I presume, yeah, it is there in Agile Practice Guide. You can go out and have a relook, or if you just go out and Google out in the internet, you'll also be able to see Invest criteria. Yes, Matt, absolutely. Okay, so moving ahead with the last question of the day. So up until this point of time, we have done awesome in terms of our participation as well as the attempts. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so this requires a couple of minutes at least to go ahead and dig deep. Let me go ahead and make it fitting into the screen first. I hope it is not too small. If it is too small, I will go ahead and read it out for you first and foremost. Let me read it out for everyone. Okay, so you are measuring an agile project as shown in the figure below. Which of the following conclusions can be drawn from the figure or table? Choose two. Okay, so you are measuring an ongoing agile project as shown in this figure. You are measuring it, and which of the following conclusions can be drawn from the figure of the table? Yeah, the first option being the product backlog was prioritized for time to value. The team was able to keep a steady rate of efficiency. The product backlog was not prioritized for time to value. The team worked more efficiently over time, or the team worked less efficiently over time. Now, what is time to value for someone who might be alien to this concept? It is nothing but the time it takes for the product to realize value in front of the users. So, how much time the user goes ahead and takes to realize the value out of the product in question. So that is your time to value. Yeah. So with this in mind, just go ahead and attempt the question. Let me start the timer. Okay, so I gave everyone a bit more time to go ahead and attempt, and I'm very happy to see all those who have gone ahead and chosen A and D. Absolutely, Matt, you are at the right shape in terms of your preparation end to end. I see Chirag also going ahead and opting for options A and D. Absolutely. Yeah, so let's see what exactly is being talked about. Okay, so out here, as I read earlier, you are measuring an ongoing agile project shown in the figure below. So you're measuring, and all these are the criteria or the numbers for these stories. Sprint 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you have these stories being planned. Now, which of the following conclusions can be drawn from the figure or table? Yeah, very importantly, when you see these facets, number of stories planned, yeah, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to, have much conclusion from that perspective. Number of stories completed, well, from the value perspective, makes more sense than just the numbers. So, as such, the question is all about these two columns out here: plan value vis-a-vis completed value. Yeah, so when you go ahead and see the plan value out here, it started from less or small and then it went out. So remember, for time to value concept, whatever we discussed just prior to attempting this question, the time to value concept is nothing but you going ahead and ensuring, or rather the time that your product is getting to, or is taking to go ahead and bring value to the customer, the time within which the customer is getting to experience value from the product. You can just coin it in any way whatsoever. Now, lesser the plan value at the outset, lesser are the chances that your customer will find more value from your product, right? It makes logical sense. Planned value is the value which you plan for in relevant periods, and if you see this planned value being as less as these, obviously you hadn't gone ahead and planned for much time to value out here. Vis-a-vis, say for example, completed value, what all you have completed. So this, as the planned value, will give you a full on hand end to end view about your time to value perspective, whereas the completed value will go ahead and give you an idea about efficiency of the team. Now, these are the two key facets which you need to keep in mind end to end. Yeah. So time to value, you get to know from plan value, and higher the plan value, obviously, the more priority you are giving to time to value. Why? Because obviously you are going ahead with more value being planned. See, this is a concept which is tied very closely to earned value management as well, earned value analysis or EVA. And if you are aware of cost management concepts in terms of plan value and completed value, then only it will make more sense in the agile paradigm. Okay, so now if you see option A, the product backlog was prioritized for time to value. Absolutely not. Yes, why? Because it wasn't prioritized, right? The time to value as such, as you see out here, it started from lesser values of plan value whatsoever. So obviously, is not prioritized whatsoever, to plan value. Okay. Option B, the team was able to keep a steady rate of efficiency. Absolutely not. It is increasing in efficiency, as you see 150 till 1350 whatsoever. The product backlog was not prioritized for time to value. Absolutely. Yeah, so if I had mentioned earlier about option A being more, I just possibly, interchange between these two options. But no, it's not option A. It is not prioritized for time to value. Yes, option D, the team worked more efficiently over time. Absolutely makes sense. The team worked less efficiently over time. No, it's only about these two columns, and what you make to, or what you draw out of these two columns whatsoever. Let me again clear the window for all of you and just look into these values. So as you move on from sprint 1 to 4, the value that we have planned, it starts from lesser values to higher values whatsoever. So obviously you hadn't gone ahead and put priority to time to value, which is nothing but the time it takes for the product to bring value to the customer. So had it been more value, then you would have prioritized for time to value, not in this particular case. So keep in mind, it is not prioritized for time to value out here. And also likewise, for from completed value column, we also get to infer that the team went ahead and was more and more efficient with time. Yeah, so keep these two facets in mind. It's options C and D, which is correct out here in this current scenario. Let's see out here. Yeah, so as you see, this is the correct option out here. Yeah, so as you see, the value increase over, which means the backlog wasn't prioritized for time to value. It should have increased or should have higher values earlier, right? And also, SPI happens to be, if you calculate SPI, the schedule performance index, that appears to be, to be able to be, something which is as such reflecting more, efficiency. The SPI happens to be, kind of greater than one. Although you don't need to calculate the SPI out here, just by looking into the completed value, you'll be able to understand why it is, more efficient from the team's perspective. Okay, so does that make sense? Awesome, Imal, you got it right. Awesome. Okay, so I guess you all are right now understanding why it is not A and it's C. Yes, just need to be careful about these two facets. Okay, so if you have any questions on any of the questions discussed thus far, can we revise the YouTube video explanations, whatever we have given, and you can go ahead and come out with understandings or the misunderstandings. I know at any point of time. My email ID again. Yeah, so feel free to reach me out over email if you have any queries, and of course, you are more than welcome to reach me out over my email ID, rather my LinkedIn ID or handle. So you can just go ahead and ping me out there at any point of time. Send me a message, send me connect request. I'd love you to have you in our team, or even help you in any way whatsoever in terms of getting concepts clear. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, SB, I understand you might be confused at this point of time, but please reach me out so that I can help you end to end. So there would be many questions out there in the PMP exam from from the option of from the perspective of two answer options or even three answer options, multiple options being correct. I would say around 10% of the questions, around 18 questions which are from multiple answers being correct, or even say drag and drop kind of questions, hotspot kind of questions with line graphs and all these questions are covered in the exam simulator. SB, it's they have worked more efficiently over time because the completed value went ahead and peaked as you moved from one time to the other. So obviously, whatever they were supposed to go ahead and work, yeah, they did with more efficiency as they moved along with time. It was not a steady rate of efficiency. So if you have more doubts on the question, reach me out. You're welcome, Matt. You're welcome, Calvin. Okay, so one more very important facet out here was the link to the sixth versus seventh edition. Let me go ahead and share again the link out here on the chat. Yeah, you can just go through that. And very importantly, if you are ready to go ahead and ace with the kind of confidence and the the preparations that we need to go ahead with, you are definitely welcome to be part of my upcoming boot camp, whose link is this on September 11th. The upcoming boot camp, and you are free to go ahead and let me know at any point of time. So I'm then happy to help take you forward. Thanks, Amit. Look forward for more collaboration. Getting so your PMP happens to be our pride. That's how we go ahead and take it forward day in and day out. We are passionate about taking you to success in day in and day out. Be it any remote part of the globe, and that's what drives us day in and day out as well. We look forward to your love, support, like, share, comments, and you reach me out at any point of time. We'll be more than happy to go ahead and take you end to end to success. Thanks, Santosh. Just let me know any kind of help from my perspective on my end. I'm always welcome. Any other questions, guys? If not, then we are pretty much okay or done with the today's session. This was, yes, absolutely a practical session, and you got to know a lot of agile concepts. Yes, that will definitely help you if you have your exam very near. Even if not, definitely reach us out. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's session. We'll again have another session with another fresh set of questions next week, same time. Yeah, till then, take care and let me know if you have any queries. Reach me out over email, over LinkedIn, or any other forms of communication. Take care, show us your love, support, and see you next time. Thank you.